Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for being here today. I stand before you with a title that may have already stirred your curiosity. My whole work is to confuse you. Yes, it sounds ironic, maybe even mischievous. But I urge you to listen with an open mind, because sometimes confusion is not a trap. It is a doorway. Confusion is often seen as something negative, something to be avoided, fixed, or overcome quickly. From our earliest years, we are taught that not knowing is a sign of weakness. In school, if you don't understand something, it's assumed you're not paying attention or lacking intelligence. But this is a misconception. Confusion is not a sign of failure. It is a powerful indication that the mind is in motion, questioning, analyzing, and attempting to reconcile new information with existing beliefs. In many ways, it is the first crack in the wall that allows new light to enter. To be confused, you are forced to slow down and think more deeply. In that moment of uncertainty, you become aware of what you don't know, which is the foundation of curiosity. Confusion interrupts the illusion of knowing and forces you to confront the limits of your current understanding. This mental tension compels the brain to search for connections, patterns, and meaning. That very act of searching is what initiates growth. Just as physical exercise stresses the muscles to make them stronger, confusion stresses the mind, forcing it to reach beyond its comfort zone and into new territory. The discomfort that comes with confusion is often what makes it so valuable. Growth never happens in complete comfort. It happens in moments of struggle, doubt, and re-evaluation. Confusion challenges us to abandon our attachment to quick answers and begin asking better questions. It humbles us, reminding us that knowledge is not static, but ever evolving, and in that humility, we become more open, more willing to listen, to explore, and to understand perspectives different from our own. Without confusion, we become rigid in our thinking, resistant to change, and stuck in old ways that may no longer serve us. Furthermore, confusion has the power to unlock creativity. When the logical mind can't find a clear answer, the imaginative part of the brain is activated. It begins to explore possibilities, what-ifs, and new frameworks. Many great inventions, works of art, and philosophical breakthroughs were born out of confusion. Think of Einstein's thought experiments or the abstract art of Picasso. Each came from a space where conventional understanding failed to explain something deeper. In that sense, confusion doesn't just lead to growth, it becomes the fertile soil from which innovation and brilliance emerge. Certainty is often glorified in modern society. We celebrate those who speak with confidence, those who claim to know the answers, and those who never waver in their beliefs. But this obsession with certainty can become a dangerous limitation. When we cling too tightly to what we believe to be true, we close ourselves off to new insights and alternative viewpoints. Certainty builds walls around our thinking, making it harder to evolve or adapt. It locks us into rigid frameworks and promotes a false sense of security. While clarity may feel comforting, it often blinds us to the complexity and depth that lie beneath the surface. In truth, the world is really black and white. Most human experiences, relationships, and dilemmas exist in shades of gray. When we demand certainty in situations that require nuance, we oversimplify reality. We turn complex issues into binary arguments, leaving little room for empathy, flexibility, or growth. This can lead to dogma, intolerance, and intellectual arrogance. We begin to dismiss others, not because they are wrong, but because they challenge our certainty. And in doing so, we stop listening. We stop learning. We become prisoners of our own so-called knowledge. Moreover, certainty can hinder emotional and psychological development. But more important, of course, there is in the humble acknowledgement of emotional and psychological uncertainty and horror. We become better listeners, more curious learners, and more understanding companions. Certainty may feel like a shield, but in reality it can become a cage that restricts the full range of human thought and experience. Philosophers throughout history have warned us about the dangers of absolute certainty. Socrates famously claimed that wisdom begins with the recognition of one's ignorance. In science, progress is made not through blind confidence, but through the willingness to revise, to test, and to be proven wrong. The greatest minds are those who remain open to being wrong, open to discovering something new, even if it contradicts what they once believed. Thus, when we allow ourselves to step away from certainty and embrace the mystery of not knowing, we step into a richer, more expansive way of thinking and being. At the heart of true wisdom lies the ability to ask meaningful questions. Throughout history, the most enlightened individuals were not necessarily those who provided answers, but those who dared to ask the right questions. Questioning is the process by which the mind stretches beyond the surface and ventures into deeper realms of understanding. It challenges assumptions, disturbs comfort zones, and encourages exploration of new perspectives. Where answers often bring closure, questions open doors. They create space for dialogue, interpretation, and curiosity, all of which are essential for developing a thoughtful and informed worldview. In our fast-paced, answer-queen society, we are often pressured to appear certain and decisive. There is little room for doubt and even less patience for those who hesitate or inquire. Yet it is in questioning that the seeds of growth are planted. By asking why or what if, we begin to deconstruct the inherited beliefs and societal norms we often accept without reflection. This is the beginning of wisdom. Not in blindly adopting knowledge, but in evaluating, challenging, and reshaping it in the light of our own understanding. Questioning is the practice of conscious thinking. It is how we move from passive learning to active engagement with the world around us. Furthermore, questioning is an act of intellectual humility. To question is to admit that you do not know everything, that there is always more to learn, more to consider, more to understand. This humility fosters openness and empathy because it places us in a position of seeking rather than asserting. It helps us see others not as opponents in a debate, but as companions in a shared journey of discovery. When we listen to their questions and respond with our own, we build bridges of understanding rather than walls of opinion. Questioning in this way becomes a form of connection, both to others and to ourselves. Even in the realm of education, questioning is the most effective way to spark critical thinking and creativity. A student who simply memorizes facts can pass a test, but a student who asks why those facts matter becomes a thinker, a creator, and a problem solver. Teachers who encourage questions do not merely impart information, they inspire inquiry and awaken curiosity in all areas of life. From philosophy to science to personal growth, the ability to question wisely is what drives us beyond the limits of the known and into the possibilities of the unknown. Wisdom, therefore, is not a collection of answers. It is a lifelong practice of asking better and deeper questions. Our minds are conditioned by the environments we grow up in. Family, culture, education, religion, media, all of these shape the way we think and perceive the world. Over time, these influences form mental boundaries, unspoken limits around what we consider possible, acceptable, or true. These boundaries become so deeply embedded that we often mistake them for reality itself. But true intellectual and emotional growth begins when we start to recognize and question those boundaries. Breaking through them is not an act of rebellion for the sake of chaos. It is a purposeful journey toward deeper understanding and broader awareness. Breaking boundaries of thought requires courage because it involves stepping into the unfamiliar. It means entertaining ideas that might initially seem uncomfortable, contradictory, or even threatening to our existing beliefs. But this discomfort is a necessary part of growth. Just as muscles must tear slightly in order to become stronger, the mind must be challenged and stretched to expand. This process can feel confusing, even painful, as we begin to shed old assumptions and entertain new ways of thinking. Yet it is in this very tension that transformation happens. The mind, when allowed to wander beyond its usual paths, discovers new landscapes of insight and truth. This breaking of boundaries is not about discarding everything we know, but about re-evaluating it with a more open and discerning perspective. It encourages us to move beyond rigid dualities, right and wrong, true and false, good and bad, and explore the nuances in between. It teaches us that many truths can exist simultaneously, that life is layered with paradoxes, and that wisdom often lies in the ability to hold multiple perspectives at once. Such mental flexibility is the mark of a truly mature thinker. When we allow ourselves to transcend the limits of conventional thought, we begin to see not just with the mind, but with insight and clarity in many ways. The most revolutionary thinkers in history were those who dared to break the boundaries of thought. They were labeled mad, dangerous, or foolish in their time, but they saw something others couldn't because they refused to be confined by the prevailing mindset. Galileo, Darwin, Freud, and countless others transformed entire fields of knowledge. By venturing beyond accepted norms, their courage to think differently paved the way for new understandings that reshaped our world. Likewise, when we break free from mental limitations, we unlock the potential to see the world not as it has been defined for us, but as it could be imagined and reimagined by us. Confusion often arrives in our lives at moments of transition, challenge, or awakening. These are the times when our familiar beliefs, patterns, or worldviews no longer seem to make sense, and we find ourselves standing at a crossroads. While this can feel deeply unsettling, it is also a powerful invitation to turn inward. In the absence of external clarity, we are compelled to look within, to examine what we truly believe, value, and understand. This is where the journey of self-discovery begins. Confucian strips away the noise of borrowed opinions and forces us to confront the raw, unfiltered landscape of our own minds and hearts. When people feel confused, they often seek external validation. Books, teachers, opinions, ideologies, hoping someone else can give them the answer. But real self-discovery cannot be handed to us. It must be uncovered through direct personal exploration. Confusion makes us question the authority of others and pushes us to investigate truth for ourselves. It challenges the foundations we've built our identity upon and invites us to rebuild them.
Stop sama laba-laba.
As we navigate the fog of confusion, we begin to realize that we are not lost, we are in the process of being found. The very act of grappling with uncertainty awakens our deeper instincts. We learn to trust our intuition, our values, and our emotional intelligence. We begin to listen more closely to the quiet inner voice that often gets drowned out by the louder noise of social expectations and cultural conditioning. Self-discovery is not about finding a final fixed identity. It is about recognizing the complexity and fluidity of who we are. It is about embracing growth, contradiction, and mystery as essential parts of the self. Ultimately, confusion is not the enemy of understanding, it is the birthplace of it. By disrupting the illusion of certainty, confusion reveals what has been hidden beneath surface-level beliefs. It compels us to ask, who am I really, without these labels, roles, and borrowed ideas? That is a profoundly powerful question, one that leads not to an easy answer, but to a richer, more authentic relationship with oneself. In this way, confusion becomes a kind of mirror, reflecting back the parts of us we may have neglected or never truly seen. Through it, we discover not just knowledge, but self-certainness. And with self-certainness comes true inner strength. Throughout history, some of the most revered thinkers, philosophers, and spiritual teachers have embraced confusion as a sacred part of the human journey. Rather than offering clear, absolute answers, they often spoke in riddles, paradoxes, or poetic language that unsettled the mind and invited deeper contemplation. He never claimed to possess wisdom, but instead questioned for those wisdom, but extended of the own in a sense of the unknown. From experience, I know that his famous assertion, "I know that I know nothing," reflects a profound humility and reverence for the vastness of truth. He understood that genuine wisdom begins where the illusion of certainty ends. Similarly, mystics like Rumi, Lao Tzu, and Buddha did not speak in rigid doctrines, but rather through metaphors, symbols, and stories that challenged conventional thinking. Their words often brought about confusion, not to mislead, but to awaken a different kind of knowing that goes beyond logic. Rumi's poetry, for instance, frequently asks the reader to embrace contradiction and surrender to mystery. Lao Tzu's Tao Te Ching confounds the rational mind with lines like, "To know that you do not know is the best. To pretend to know when you do not is a disease." These teachings do not direct the mind in a straight line, they open it in spirals. What these great thinkers understood is that the truth is not a fixed point but a fluid, living reality. In that sense, their confusing teachings were actually profound tools for transformation. They made the student work, reflect, and wrestle with the deeper layers of meaning, resulting in a more authentic and lasting understanding. Even in more modern contexts, innovators and visionaries have followed the same pattern. Albert Einstein once said, "The important thing is not to stop questioning." Carl Jung, the great psychologist, emphasized the necessity of embracing the unconscious, the unknown, and the shadow self as part of becoming whole. None of these minds promised comfort. They invited confusion as a sacred companion on the path to insight. They knew that when a person is confused, they are not passive. They are alive, searching, and engaged. Through their example, we learn that confusion is not the end of thought. It is the beginning of a deeper, more expansive wisdom. In a world saturated with opinions, ideologies, and constant external noise, many people rely on others to define what is true, meaningful, or right for them. Confusion plays a critical role in this process by stripping away the borrowed beliefs that we've accepted without question. It leaves us standing in the middle of uncertainty, where the only real compass left is our inner voice.
stop sama laba-laba.
This inner clarity is not instant, nor is it loud. It often arises slowly, subtly, in the quiet moments when we sit with our doubts, rather than run from them. The very confusion that once felt like a burden becomes a space in which we begin to hear ourselves more honestly. We may notice thoughts we've ignored, feelings we've suppressed, or dreams we've set aside. Clarity doesn't always announce itself with certainty. It sometimes arrives as a question that feels more real than any answer. You can sometimes go out to feel, know that sometimes the occasion that feels more real than any answer. As we learn to trust our inner dialogue, we develop discernment, the ability to separate what is truly ours from what we've been conditioned to believe. Reclaiming inner clarity also means taking responsibility for our thoughts and choices. When we stop blindly accepting what society, culture, or authority tells us and instead examine things through our own lens, we begin to live more authentically. Confusion acts as a pause, a break in the flow of unconscious acceptance that gives us time to ask, what do I really believe? What matters to me? What feels aligned with who I truly am? In answering these questions, we become the authors of our own understanding, and clarity becomes not a destination, but an unfolding process that evolves with us. Moreover, the clarity we find within is more resilient than any external truth handed to us. It is grounded not in convenience or approval, but in self-antithesis and personal alignment. This kind of clarity empowers us to stand firm in our values, even when they differ from the crowd. It allows us to navigate complexity with confidence, because we are no longer chasing certainty, we are embodying presence. Confusion, in this sense, is not something to avoid but something to embrace, because it purifies the noise around us and guides us to a clarity that no one else can define or deliver. It becomes the very force that brings us home to ourselves. So if you ever find yourself lost in confusion, unsure, unsettled, questioning everything, do not rush to escape it. Sit with it. Listen to what it's trying to show you, because within that confusion lies the invitation to grow, to evolve, and to truly know yourself. In a world full of easy answers and borrowed truths, let confusion be your companion, not as a curse, but as a guide. For it is only when the old patterns are shaken that the new ones can emerge. And in that unfolding, you don't just find answers, you find transformation.